So what's really complicated about the whole thing is that Rambam asks the question, if God knows everything, how do we have free choice? And he basically says we can't understand it. So the commentaries on the Rambam say, that was not very smart. If you don't know the answer, don't raise the question. Or in different words, the Rambam is saying, how does this make sense? And his answer is, it doesn't. You just have to believe it. So the commentaries say, well then, that's what we were doing all along. What'd you have to raise the question for?
So it boils down to us needing to be believers. That's it. For everything. Yeah. Just believe.
Then we wouldn't need all this.
Right, but this promotes discussion and it makes us aware.
And in the end, we don't know anything.
In conclusion, it fortifies our understanding that we just have. Could have saved everybody.
It just proves how ignorant we are. And we spend all our time proving our ignorance. That's frustrating. Okay, let's take a look at some of the texts. The first text is the pasuk you were quoting. I have given before you this day life and good, death and evil. So you're telling me that good is life and evil is death. Life and death I have set before you, blessing and curse. You should choose life. That doesn't sound like a very free choice. It sounds like a compelling choice. I mean, you don't want to die, right? So behave yourself. That's not free choice.
Listen, free. I guess the only free aspect is that in the end, you choose. That's the fact. You choose. You're making the choice. Nobody's making the choice for you. That's the aspect of freedom.
Well, something is making the choice for you. Your survival instinct. So it's not like life and death are equal and you don't know which one to choose. They're not equal. So if you choose death, there must be a very compelling reason. Something's pushing you. We usually call it insanity. And if you choose life, well, it's because you're afraid to die. Okay, so the first thing we have to establish is that there's a difference between choice and free choice. Nobody's questioning whether we have choice. Of course we have we make choices all the time. Every minute we're making a choice. You want to go, you want to stay, you want to eat this, that, drink. We're always making choices. What the Torah is telling us is that there is also, in addition to your ability to make choices, you also have the capacity to make a free choice. And that's a whole different thing. And that's the one that we have a problem with. When do we experience a choice that is really free? And free means free of influence. Am I making the choice or is the choice being made for me? So for example, somebody comes back from shopping and says, there's an outfit in this particular store, it's to die for. you gotta have it. You're not giving me a choice.
And you're choosing death, right? Because it's to die for.
It's to die for. In other words, it's so compelling, how could you not? So did you choose it or did kind of it choose you?
So free choice would only be something that's equal on both
Right. So what's the problem with that?
Not many things fall in that category.
No. But the few things that do. What's wrong with make a choice when both options are equal?
They're the same. What's the choice? What's the difference? Which one you choose?
Well, you're not going to eat both apples, you just want one. Huh?
No, I never really got the part about them being the same. If two things are the same, then where's
Right.
Yeah,
where's
if it's
the
equally
choice?
good, then there's a choice. If there's one better than the other, even by a little bit, then then it's not a choice.
Then it's not a free
Then
choice.
it's not a free choice.
Maybe to not eat that second apple.
And let's define the word choice. What does it mean to choose? That's nice.
Take the sum of the parts and
It's
see
nice.
which one you prefer.
Softer.
Oh, I understand.
Huh?
That's it.
What does it mean to choose?
Stop spinning your brain around whether or not you should do one thing or another.
If you say to your child, for example, think before you do something. Think before you talk. Are you saying make the right choice? No, you're not talking about choice. You're talking about reason. You're talking about a wise decision. A wise decision is not a choice. In other words, you consider doing something, you consider the consequences, and you come to the conclusion it's not worth it. So you choose not to do it. Your reason compels you not to do it. So it's not a choice anymore, it's a wise decision. It's a judgment call. So there's a difference between choice and judgment call. One is a reasoned decision, the other one is a choice. If you have a reason to pick one over the other, then it's not a choice anymore. It's a reasonable decision. And what makes it reasonable can be any little thing. You have two apples and you choose one because it's closer. Why reach further when you can have the one that's closer? So even that is not a choice. That's a reasonable decision. Because we want to conserve our energy. To reach further uses up more energy.
What if they're both exactly the same spot?
Okay, so if they're both exactly in the same spot and they're both exactly alike, now you have to make a choice.
Well, what's the choice? It doesn't matter which one you do. So
Maybe the taste, there could be things. Maybe one's more attractive looking.
Huh? Maybe what?
Well,
if one's more attractive looking, then it's the
maybe
same
one
kind
looks
of a thing.
fresher or one looks.
Well, then there's no choice.
There's never really a choice then.
You're making
Okay, so imagine, hypothetically, that you have two apples and they are exactly alike in every detail. But you only want one, so which one are you going to eat?
Doesn't matter.
Random.
You got to eat one. Which one are you going to eat?
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
It matters
Just
to the
reach
apple,
out
I
and take
guess.
one.
Which one?
Well, the only effect of the choice is it is a choice, and you are making it, and it is completely free, but it doesn't have any consequence to you. It has a consequence to the apple.
Okay, so which one are you going to pick?
I feel like the lead up to that choice is more of the choice. I'm making a choice to be an obsession over which apple I'm going to eat rather than just taking one.
Yeah, but just taking one sounds really simple. Which one are you going to take? In the human condition, if the two options are absolutely equal, like I have two apples and they're exactly alike, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to eat an orange. I cannot pick between the two apples. I can't. I'm paralyzed. Just give me an orange. Or, never mind, I've lost my appetite. We cannot make a choice unless we have, what is it called, the tipping point. Something has got to tip the scale one direction or another. Otherwise, it paralyzes me.
There is a philosophical idea, I don't remember which philosopher that said it, there is a donkey between two different lakes, and they're exactly the same distance, the donkey will just die because he can't make a decision. But I would think, on the opposite, the human will just make the decision. That's really the difference between the two. So if the two choices are exactly the same, he'll choose survival because he'll just choose a random lake. The animal, by opposition, cannot make that choice because he doesn't, I don't know if he doesn't have the concept of survival or whatever it is, that freezes him. But the humans can make that random choice just by choosing randomly one versus the other.
I'm not sure. The human being will come up with a reason.
Yes, has that capacity.
But he'll come up with a reason. He'll find something about one of them. But if he really...
With equality, he can find something. He can just make up something. That's really the human condition
Right.
versus the animal.
Right. For example, if he's Jewish and there are two lakes,
He'll pick the right.
Right.
he'll go to the right side because the right is better. But you see, it's not a free choice.
Where the view across the lake is different,
Then it's not an equal
then
choice.
it's not right. Which has to
But is
be past
anything
the lake.
ever really the same?
So you see, there are people who are catatonic.
What does that mean?
Immobile. Stairs.
They just sit and do nothing.
It's a mental thing, though. It's a mental.
Frozen, sort of?
But that's because they don't see a difference. Should I get up or not? What's the difference? Psych.
So it's apathy in a way.
It's worse, much worse. It's in the inability to distinguish. So all things look alike. And if everything's alike, then what do? You don't do anything. So we really don't, it seems, that we don't even have the capacity to make a free choice. It's not possible. Because it's free only when the options are equal. And when the options are equal, I'm paralyzed. So when it says, I place before you life and death, choose life, it's not really a choice. That's a wise decision. So it's not saying choose, it's saying be reasonable. Use your head, right? You say to your kids, use your head. That's not exercising free choice. That's exercising judgment. So the opposite of choice is judgment. I did it because it seemed to be the right thing to do. That's not a choice.
Well, you choose that you're not going to go with your fear, and you're going to go with what your higher instinct, or for lack of a better word, however you want to put it.
Because it's
That's
the more
a
reasonable.
choice to do that. You choose to overcome your fear. Let's say. So that is a choice.
It is a choice.
equal instances, not in terms of their characteristics, but in terms of the fact that you can make either one of those choices.
But it's not free. In other words, whatever you'll find more compelling will become your choice.
Right. Fear, if the fear overcomes you. Right. Okay.
So a person is faced with the choice to do a sin or not to do a sin. That's not a free choice. The sin feels better. So what's the choice? Say, well, think of the consequences. Oh, then it's not a choice anymore. Now you're telling me to use judgment. So if I come to the conclusion sin doesn't pay, I didn't choose not to sin. I decided not to sin because the consequences are, can't do the time, don't do the crime.
You said something yesterday that the animal soul and the godly soul had both good and bad in them, and that's equal.
In what way?
So they both have the same things. So if those are equal, then following.
But good and bad is not equal. They're not the same at all. So if you want to make a choice and call it free, you have to remove all reason, logic, benefit.
So what do you have left?
It seems like what you have left is paralysis.
And how can you make a choice?
You can't.
So who called it free choice to begin with?
Why does it say choice?
Why is that the
Why
issue?
does it
Okay,
use
so
the
here's the point. The Torah is telling us that there is something you didn't realize you had. You know you can make choices, but they're never free. In addition to those choices, there is also this phenomenon called free choice. And we're trying to figure out, where is that? How is that? So that's what the dilemma with choice is.
Well, is this the source of choice to begin with, this process? In
Is-
other words, this is where the whole issue comes from? Because, there is no suggestion of it being free. It doesn't say anything about that. It's just that you.
In the verse?
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't sound like it's free at all.
It doesn't say free.
No.
It doesn't even bring that issue up. So why is
In
that
fact,
issue?
it's giving you a very good reason. This is death and this is life. So what's the choice? Okay, let's go on. See what the Rambam's problem is. The Rambam says,
Which number?
number 2, see, in the middle of the second paragraph, were God to decree that a person should be righteous or wicked, or if there were to be something in a person's primary nature that would compel them toward a particular path, a particular conviction, a particular character trait, or a particular deed, if he's compelled towards that deed, how could God command us through the prophets, do this and do not do this? What place would the entire Torah have? Torah means instruction. Well, what's the point of giving me instruction if I'm already programmed?
Because there's some element of give. There's some element of space that you have. There's some aspect that allows you to separate yourself.
Okay, so he's establishing the fact that we need to have free choice, otherwise Torah doesn't mean anything. Secondly, by what measure of justice would God punish the wicked and reward the righteous? If you're already programmed, why do you deserve any credit and why do you deserve any punishment? It's not you doing it. Look at text 5. I mean, that says it presents the problem. You see what it says? Text 5. All is foreseen and free choice is granted. Excuse me?
That's weird.
Contradiction.
Uh-huh.
So between the two, there's a real question.
Yep. So, again, let's clarify this. There are a number of issues. Number one, God said don't do it. how is it possible that you can ignore his command? Is his command not effective? God said, let there be light. There was light. There can't not be if God says there should be. So if God says keep Shabbos, what do you mean you have free choice? Right? So the first question is, how can we disregard a commandment, a statement? If God says, it should happen. Question number 2. Never mind what God says. What about what God wants? If he doesn't want you to do it, how is it possible for you to do it? His will is not effective?
Well, there's some purpose served in the fact that it's not a given, and some purpose is served to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't set it up that way. So,
But how does it work?
how does it work? There's some aspect of the animal soul and the Yetzer Hara that
Sounds like we have a choice.
But how?
That's the choice you were talking about. We have a choice.
The question is there not a contradiction between God
not a
saying,
choice, it's guidance.
I mean, it's not a command.
There's plenty of commands.
Yeah.
Couldn't you have put the Eitz Hadas somewhere else?
But how does, yes, but how does the Eitz Hadas overrule God's command? It's more powerful than his command? More powerful than his will?
Did he will Hava to eat? Did he will it?
He said, no, don't eat it.
That's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't.
Enough.
But what he says and what his will is, do they always have to be the same?
Oh no, not him too. Another question. If he knows what you're going to choose, doesn't that prevent you from having choice? And by the way, why is that?
Not necessarily.
Why everybody says, well, if he knows what you're going to choose, then obviously you don't have choice. Why is that a problem?
Because he's timeless, he can see everything. There's no past, present, future. He
Right.
sees it all.
Right.
But we still made the decision to get there.
That's the answer. But why was there a problem in the first place? He knows what you're going to choose, and you choose it. Why? Where's the contradiction? It seems the contradiction is, how can he know what you're going to choose if you're not compelled? Like a psychiatrist can say, I know exactly how you're going to handle that crisis. How do I know? Because you're programmed. If you weren't programmed, how would I know? So if God knows what you're going to do, then you're predictable. Well, if you're predictable, you don't have free choice.
That's what the Rambam is saying.
So that's why God's knowledge is a contradiction to free choice. God's command is a contradiction to free choice. God's will is a contradiction to free choice.
And the way he created us is a contradiction to free choice as well. Meaning with all our, the way we're programmed as human beings, each one individually.
Yep.
That's why
One final issue is divine providence. God already planned it. How can you have free choice?
Oh, so we do things on the way, it doesn't mean that it's what, like let's say we do something different from what God planned, but the end result is what God planned. So things can change along the way.
So God didn't plan every detail?
Did, but then we chose differently.
How could you?
Thought we had free choice.
That's right. So either his plans got to go, or our freedom of choice is not real.
Well, there's two levels. It's levels. It's not all the same.
So
And how does he even have a plan if he recreates anew every second? I mean, if he has a plan, then he doesn't recreate from anew completely. He builds on, right?
He
It seems that the only
he
God
recreates.
has free choice. We don't really. Every
Okay.
second he has a free choice to do or not do, but we're
Okay, so the one thing we see from this, most religious Jews don't have a problem because they'll simply say, "Yeah, right. Okay, so it's as if we have free choice." Or God planned everything. It's like he planned it. He didn't really plan everything. That option, Hasidus does not accept that at all. Because you're talking about Teiras Emes. In Torah, everything is true. It's not as if, it's something like, it's similar. That cop-out is not acceptable. God is our Father. Well, He's not our Father. It's like a father. That is horrible. If Torah says He's your Father, it's got to be true and real.
This is a really
Although there's a difference between true and real. It's got to be true, and then it's got to become real. So just the approach.
This is really tough. If we're sitting here as adults, but as teenagers, as people that are going through life struggles, this is a really big thing. Like, if God set me up for this, where's my choice in how I succumb to any addiction, anything that He throws at me? It's just He's waiting for the bomb to just, He really is. It's like a ticking time bomb. You know what's going to happen. You're set up for this. Question is, how are you going to respond?
Yeah. So, the Mishnah says, everything is in God's hands except Yiras Shamayim. Other than the fear of God, everything is pre-programmed. So, we now know that freedom of choice has very specific application. You have freedom of choice only when it comes to the question of God-fearing. To do right or wrong, you have freedom. But things that are neither right nor wrong, God already planned it out. In other words, to serve Him or not to serve Him, that's your only choice. Whether you're male or female, contrary to public opinion, you don't have a choice. Whether you're going to be in this generation or a different generation, you didn't have a choice. Whether you're going to be born or not, you didn't have a choice. You don't have a choice in anything other than your relationship to Him. Which kind of makes sense, because that's the whole point. The whole point of creation is, will you be mine? So in that we have free choice. And everything else we don't.
It's a simple answer. I said it's a simple answer.
No, so people get frustrated. How come I can't get a job? It's not meant to be. Well, where's my freedom of choice? Not about your job.
What about the way you respond to situations? Is that not?
If there's a moral consideration. If one response is moral and the other one is not, you have free choice. In other words, to do it God's way or to not do it God's way, that you have a free choice.
But even that, God knew what we were going to choose.
Right. So,
What's make a difference?
so the first thing is not to get frustrated, as you were mentioning, not to get frustrated because things don't go your way.
Things don't go his way. The kid wants to go to yeshiva. He's not set up for it. His brain isn't working in that capacity. God gave him struggles.
Right.
It's not your way, it's his way.
Who's he?
You know, I'm not sure actually after these classes. He, she, I don't know.
Talking about your son?
No, so
No, my son is a son.
so the
I'm talking about
teenager,
in general, a teenager.
yeah, so the teenager should not be frustrated by the fact that he can't make it happen. You will never give him free choice on that. The only time you should be frustrated about your choices is where you have choices, and that's only in Yirah Shamayim. So now look at the picture this way. Aren't we basically programmed at birth?
Yeah.
So a good psychiatrist will be able to predict every decision you're going to make based on your personality, your temperament, your background, your influences, you know, what. Like the Rebbe would say to somebody, you shouldn't marry somebody less frum than you, because then you're going to become less frum. And 10 minutes later he says to somebody else, so what if he's not frum? So you'll make him frum. You got to know who you're talking to. And that's programmed.
What's programmed in that, what you just said?
Whether you're the type that's going to succumb to influence or be the influence. So here's the thing. A psychiatrist at the top, the best, can predict everything you're going to do, except if you have Yirah Shamayim. That's a monkey wrench. By your personality, you're going to steal that thing if you're tempted. But you have Yirah Shamayim, so no, you're not going to steal.
It's a game changer.
It's the unpredictable ingredient. Just recently, a guy told me that he's depressed, and he says, "Don't worry, I'm not suicidal. I know right from wrong." In other words, I am suicidal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have mentioned it. He said, "But I'm not going to kill myself because it's wrong." So if he hadn't been raised with that idea that it's wrong, by personality, by temperament, by circumstance, he would kill himself. So there's this unknown ingredient, unpredictable. You bring in God, then you're not being yourself. You're doing what he says. Sometimes. Sometimes not. So that becomes the choice. You cannot be what you're programmed to be if you introduce God.
But this Yirah Shamayim, if it's really a free choice, we should be paralyzed to yes or no.
No, he wants. If he wants, then that's what I'm going to do.
But we talked about before about the freedom of choice, the randomness, equality. Like we can do it, we cannot do it. So it's just randomness that some have Yirah Shamayim, others don't. What makes that? If it's such a free choice, then in a way it's even more unfair. You could say, well.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. First, let's finish the description. A person does mitzvahs because it's his nature. Now, he sits and learns all day because that's his temperament, that's his nature. That's predictable. That's no free choice because it's not Yirah Shamayim. In other words, the one ingredient that is unpredictable is Yirah Shamayim, not the act of a mitzvah. I can predict which mitzvah you're going to do. I can't predict your Yirah Shamayim. I can't predict your reaction to him.
If he chose to sit and learn all day and not go to work, that's not a choice.
Yes.
How you gonna live? How you gonna
But if that's his temperament, then it's predictable. What's the...
It's not his temperament.
Ah.
Maybe he went against,
Exactly.
great project leader and, do things, but he decided it's better to sit and learn. So he made a choice,
Out of Yireh Shamayim?
probably.
Okay, so if it's out of Yireh Shamayim, then it's an unknown quantity. You can't predict that. In other words, by studying the person's psyche, you can't predict that he's going to have Yireh Shamayim. You can predict whether he'll be bookish, whether he'll be studious. You can predict whether he'll be timid. You can predict whether he'll be aggressive. You can't predict how God is going to influence his behavior. So God is the unknown element here. So what I'm saying is, people who do mitzvahs because of their own temperament, that's not Yireh Shamayim, and that is predictable.
Do they get points for that? Just curious.
For which one?
Because it's part of their personality and it's predictable. It has nothing to do with God. It's just that's the way. That's what.
Will they get
happens.
points for it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Even if there's no factor of God in there, that's what seems right. Because yesterday you were saying how if it's connected to godliness, then you ignite that spark, whether it's in the nefesh halakis and nefesh bahamis. But if it's not connected to a godly source, then it just stays dormant, and that's why the guy
But you do get points for it.
No, I'm saying like the Chasidei El Masaylam, right? Where you were saying like if it's not a godly thing,
Right.
you're just doing the right thing, then it's just the right thing.
Predictable.
That's what it means, yeah. Doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't make them Chasidei U'Mazaylim. So, choice exists only in moral issues, and moral issues are unpredictable because it's God interfering with your personality. So from our perspective, the choice and the freedom of choice, very real. A bad person, programmed to be bad, can suddenly do something good because he heard God wanted it. Then it's Yireh Shamayim. So, everything is pre-programmed except Yireh Shamayim. That takes away a lot of mystery. That clarifies a lot. But it's still not finished. What determines whether you're going to have Yireh Shamayim or not? It can't be nothing. So if it's determined, then it's not free choice. But then if nothing determines it, then how does it happen?
Maybe that's where Hashgacha Pratis comes in.
But the Hashgacha Pratis has its own problem because it's already decided.
You have to choose it.
Okay. This is, we can go on like this.
So what's the answer to that question? What determines whether they're going to have Yireh Shamayim or not? What does determine that?
Okay. Let me see if there's anything else we need to do before we get to that.
We do all the mitzvahs in order to increase our Yireh Shamayim. We have Yireh Shamayim to do the mitzvahs, and then the mitzvahs give us Yireh Shamayim.
I got a little distracted here. There's a problem with how do we go against what God says? How do we go against what he wants? How do we go against what he already knows? These are three different issues. So how can we go against what he knows? That's not a big problem. He knows because he sees you making your choice. He's not limited in time. So he doesn't have to sit in today and predict what you're going to do tomorrow. He is in tomorrow. And in tomorrow you made your choice. So he sees you make the choice and therefore knows what you're going to choose. How did that interfere with your choice? If I see you do something and now I know what you did, that influenced your choice? So the problem with God knowing is that how can he predict if you're not programmed? Answer is he's not predicting. He's watching you make your choice. Now the problem with God's will, if he wants you to behave a certain way, how can you have the option to not do it? The answer is because he wants you to choose it. When he tells you to keep Shabbos, he doesn't mean, I want Shabbos. He means, I want you to want Shabbos. So it doesn't go against his will that you are not ready to keep Shabbos. That doesn't contradict his will. His will is not failing. It's like you want your kid to grow up and be a mensch. You don't want him to just follow your orders. Like a kid who hits his brother, you say, you shouldn't have done that. And the kid says, you didn't tell me not to. That's horrible. You want the kid to be a mensch, not just do whatever you say. So God doesn't want us to just do whatever he says. He wants us to become what he says. And therefore, he's leaving room for you to not do it. Whereas when God says, let there be light, this is not a negotiation. Just let there be light. So there's light. But when he says, I want you to be in a relationship with me, don't do it because I asked you, because that's not a relationship. So in God's will, there is room for free choice because he wants you to choose it. In other words, how can God have an opinion and yet not impose it on you? Same is true with your children. How can you want certain things for your children and yet give them independence? Sound like a contradiction?
If you stand back, it makes them feel, but it is. In essence, it is a contradiction.
What are the two different things?
You want certain things for your children, you want to instill values in them, you teach them a way of life, but the independence that you want for them is, you want that they should ultimately know to do these things on their own.
Exactly.
So it's guidance that leads to their independence. And
Otherwise, they're not them, they're you.
So how do you tell them what to do and still allow them independence?
Like
as they grow, they make mistakes.
You evoke their...
We have to suck it up and pray that eventually they'll know to do right and wrong.
Well, if they make mistakes, it's because you didn't impose your will well enough.
But you have to know yourself. I can't do everything for you. I can't put my head on your shoulders. So I'll guide you, I'll teach you, and you have to apply it. And you have to make it.
So some people, particularly in modern times, believe that if you want your child to be independent, don't tell them anything.
Yeah, not even in their gender.
Stick around. The Board of Health is making a decision today.
That's right.
Figuring out what you want to be on the
It'd
list.
be crazy.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. You can choose nothing.
So there's that permissive philosophy. You got to let your kids be independent. Stop imposing religion and opinions and limits. There's another philosophy that says if you want your kid to be independent when they grow up, you have to give them total security when they're young. And total security means be involved in every detail of their lives. If they get into a fight at school, run to the school, get involved, find out who's doing what, be hands-on. Some people say, what are you doing? Let the kid handle it so that he'll grow up independent. So, but he won't be independent if he's insecure. So the argument goes back and forth. The real answer is, it doesn't matter what you do or what you say. Do you want independence for your child? Then he will have it. If you don't want it, he's not going to have it no matter how you behave. So you can stay out of his life and give him independence because you really believe in independence. And that communicates itself. Or you can be totally involved in his life, but you really want independence. He'll have independence. In other words, there's a separate ingredient. I can tell you how to sit and how to eat and how to talk, and you still have independence. Because I'm not taking it away from you. So just because I told you how to sit and how to eat and how to talk, doesn't mean you're not independent. That's a separate issue. So how does God allow us free choice or independence? Because he wants it for us. So he can give us 613 commandments. Doesn't take away our independence. So what is the key to raising
Guidance is not independence. Teaching your kid is not you, like, putting yourself on them. I don't know what the word is, but if you're constantly telling your children things that you approve of or you don't approve of, how is that showing them independence? How is that giving them a free choice? How is that making them?
What is the difference? What is the difference between educating?
Especially if there's consequences as well. Like, how is that an independent? That's exactly.
Because, well, you have to acknowledge their reception of what you're saying.
What is the difference between educating and brainwashing?
There's no independence with brainwashing.
And yet, the educational method, how you educate, could be more forceful than the method of brainwashing, which is very gentle, very subtle. So how forceful you are, how many commandments you give, or how many consequences, doesn't necessarily take away your freedom of choice, your independence. But a subtle brainwashing procedure takes away your free choice. Because the brainwashing wants to take away your free choice. That's what it's aimed at. Whereas education, no matter how forceful, it doesn't mean to take away. That's not what it's trying to do.
It's like brainwashing is manipulation, and education is more honest.
Mm-hmm. Manipulation means I want to control you. Education means I want to inform you. I don't want to control you. So God says, here are my commandments that you should do. So because he doesn't want to control you, you're not controlled. Yeah, but he said don't do it. You don't do it. Okay, let's get to the real substance here. God's knowledge is not a problem because he's in the future. He's not predicting. God's will is not a problem because he wants you to be independent. He wants a relationship. He wants your response to him. If he doesn't let you respond to him, he's killing the relationship, which he doesn't want to do. Now, divine providence. How is that not a contradiction to your free choice? God already planned every detail. How does that leave you free choice? I mean, either it's going to turn out that he didn't plan it right, because you surprised him by making a choice, or you don't really have free choice.
Maybe Hashgacha process is like his marketing campaign. You can still choose to ignore the marketing.
So what good is it? The campaign, the marketing
Well, I
plan.
mean, you still have to give an account for what you've done, and that's part of the account. For what you've chosen not to do.
So what did he plan?
Well, if he wants you to choose life, then
Then he shouldn't plan it. He should leave it unplanned.
yeah, but he knows. I think he knows our neshamas, and he knows every individual neshama and what their experiences are and what exactly they need to really have free choice. Maybe. So maybe that's why some people experience Hashgacha pratis more often at certain points in their life, because he knows that's what they need. Maybe, I don't know.
It's interesting. So Hashgacha pratis is like a pep talk.
Campaign. Yeah.
Go for it, I'm behind you.
Maybe.
Hashgacha pratis means that God has a plan for every single detail. When did he make that plan? Before you made your choice or after?
He made it independently of time.
Independent of time. He made the plan after you made your choices. Divine providence is determined by you. Knowing the choice you're making, God plans around it. Hashgacha pratis doesn't mean you're out of control. On the contrary, Hashgacha pratis means he's completely dependent on you. His entire plan, all dependent on you. He is responding to you when he makes Hashgacha pratis.
Seems like a contradiction.
Yeah.
How so?
If it's all around you, then how do you sit and say it's all shkach pratis?
He knows what you're gonna do. Hashem knows everything, even what you're gonna do.
And therefore plans around that choice.
It was planned already, it's not being planned.
Planned.
Nothing works out in your day, it's because of you, your choices, and saying you sometimes.
It's the universe, like,
So then
Nothing
shkach
you
pratis
did.
doesn't sound that way. If you're the one that did it.
But that's what God needs in this world.
It's like very simple. You decided to jump out of the window. Now God has to decide whether he's going to put up a net or not.
but he knows you're gonna jump. He
Yes.
knows you're gonna jump.
Yeah,
He only knows because you made that decision.
He
yeah.
knows what you're gonna do regardless of what you do.
No,
Not what you're gonna do.
that's going back to the first problem. The problem is not that he knows. The problem is that he planned. He already decided. So how do you have free choice? The answer is he doesn't decide until after you choose. After you choose to jump out the window, he decides whether you should get hurt or not.
So it's like almost everything already happened, but
You already made your
I
choice.
don't know that. He knows that.
Right.
It's like
You know the
simulation
consequence? You
program.
know the consequence.
Kind of.
No, so it's like, does he know what you're going to choose before you choose it?
Yes,
No,
But some things happen.
Hashem knows everything.
because there's no before.
It's only the present.
It's all present. So he doesn't know what you're going to do before you do it. So the Hashgacha pratis is his response to your free choice. Which means you are free to make the choice, but he decides the consequence.
It seems like a very strong statement to say he doesn't know what you're going to do before you do it.
Because there's no before. So here's how you say
Okay,
it.
okay. But really, from our perspective, he It does.
Oh, so the right way to say it is, he knows what you choose.
Before you choose it.
No, before you know what you choose. Not before you chose it.
Right.
In other words, you're behind.
But that choice again is only godly or not godly.
Yes.
It's not, am I going to eat hamburger, or it's only, am I going to make a bracha or not?
So, Hashgacha Pratis is not a contradiction to free choice. It's the reaction to free choice.
So how do we explain the things that happen to us, not the things that we've chosen?
That influence our
That's
choice.
certainly not a choice.
Well, that's a different choice.
Right. But that's part of Hashgacha Pratis, so
Yes.
where's our free will in that?
No, only in moral things. Now, we still don't have a good definition for free choice. What's free about it? So, in the human condition, we mentioned before, in the human condition, you cannot make a free choice. You can't. You have to have a reason, you have to have a motivation, you have to have a cause. Something has to contribute to your choice, otherwise you cannot make a choice. So non-Jews don't have free choice. They have choices, not free choices. Because a human being has to have a reason.
The non-Jews have reasons for choosing certain things over other things.
Yes, they have a reason.
That's why it's not free.
If a non-Jew meets identical twins who are exactly the same in every way and perfectly compatible with the non-Jew, and they have to choose which one to marry, and they both want to marry the same person,
Can't
and
do
that's
it.
free choice.
Can't do it.
Why not?
They can't.
But I thought we already established that choosing between two things that are identical is really free, in a way, free choice, right? Didn't we
By
establish that?
definition.
By definition.
But in reality, we can't do it. In other words, if we had a really free choice to make, we wouldn't be able to make it. We would need a reason. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says in the first Perek of Tanya. Non-Jews who do kindness for a reason.
Then why would a non-Jew be willing to give up their life to save another person?
For a reason.
But the reason transcends.
It's a very good
their
reason.
Their life.
Yes,
So
it's a very good reason. Noble reason, but a reason. In other words, he doesn't see it as equal. Die, not die. No. He is convinced that he has to die, doing whatever he's doing. So let's now get the definition. We all have the assumption that choice means there are two or more options and you have to pick one. Yes?
Yes.
God chose to create the world. What were the options?
Not created.
There were no options. There was no world. There was nothing. And God chose to create a world. Is that really a choice? There was nothing. The idea that every choice must involve options is not correct. If we are really free to do what we want, that's true of us. It doesn't demand options. I am either free or I'm not free.
it seems very dehumanizing to say all non-Jews have no free choice. I don't mean to interrupt, but
It's not
seems
dehumanizing.
quite dehumanizing.
No, it's not. It's humanizing.
No, but Hava was a human. She was a human. Did she not have free choice then? Is that what we're saying?
She was a divine human. She was
She
not.
didn't have free choice, so she wasn't
She
really
did.
human.
She did
Isn't
have.
that what it means to be human? You can choose.
Obviously, she was more than human. So we're not dehumanizing, we're simply humanizing. The idea that there is freedom of choice is not part of the human condition. It's like saying a non-Jew has one soul, not two souls. That's dehumanizing? No, that's defining the human being. Having two souls is not human.
You say that every choice must involve options, and that's not a correct statement.
Right.
But could you just explain why?
What is real freedom? Real freedom means nothing prevents me from being me. Isn't that real freedom? A guy can be sitting in a Russian jail and he's free. He has no options. He can't go, he can't, but he's free because he remains himself.
He can have fear of heaven, even if he's a non-Jew, though, right?
Sure.
So that's not in Hashem's hands, fear of heaven. So then he has free choice.
That's really good.
Really defending,
I'm sorry.
defending the.
No, but she has a good argument.
Well, it's a matter of what is a Jew. That's
If you look at the 7 commandments that non-Jews have, they're all reasonable because they have to be. Not mixing meat and milk, that's only for Jews because there's no reason. So again, let's get back to the definition.
So he's saying options stop you from choosing. Is that
You see that?
I
That makes
heard
sense?
it, but so then if options stop you from choosing, then what allows you to choose? Now we took away the options, so what's the next step after that?
The next step is find the freedom in yourself, not in the options. Free to be me.
Find the freedom in yourself.
Freedom is the essence of you. It has nothing to do with 2 apples.
So you're saying a person has to really know their self to be free. Most people don't really know their true self, or if they do, it's
Yeah.
too hard to get there. So
Or another way of
then
saying
they
it,
can't be free.
another way of saying it is there's the thought that if I'm really going to be free, give me all the options. If I can do anything, then I'm free. So the more options I have, the freer I am. It turns out that that's not.
so free choice is an internal
Yes.
state of
Yeah.
being, not-
Free choice means get rid of everything that could block me or prevent me from being me. Which means if I am really free, then I have no options. I am what I am, and that's all what I am.
So the paradox of free choice is that it isn't free.
So almost saying free choice means free from having to make a choice. Because I'm already me. What's the choice?
And the me that you're referring to is
the godly soul. So when God says, choose life, first he says, I place before you life and death, good and evil, right? Options. And then God says, okay, you know what? Never mind the options. Choose life. He doesn't say choose life over death. So there's a choice that comes when you have options and you got to pick one. And then there's the essential choice. Has nothing to do with options. In fact, somebody wrote a book called The Tyranny of Choice. When you have too many choices, it makes you crazy. It doesn't add freedom. It just pulls you in 10 different directions. In other words, if nothing interferes with me, what will I do? A mitzvah or a sin? If nothing interferes, I will do a mitzvah. Why? That's me. And if you don't interfere with me, that's my freedom. So real freedom has no options. Because if I can do either one, then who am I really? Then I'm not in touch with my true self. Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice for the godly soul, is not a choice. It's like, do I really want to die for this thing?
I'm glad you brought that up.
No, I don't want to die, but I can't do idolatry. And what does it mean I can't? It's not me. Nothing is preventing me, nothing is forcing me, so it's a free decision, free from having to make a choice.
But it's an Averis, I won't do it.
Huh?
It's an Averis, I won't do it.
I do other Avedas. Even the lowest of the low has Mesiras Nefesh. Like what happened all of a sudden?
But is free choice always good and bad, or it could be
Yeah,
good
right.
and good?
No. Right. For a
Good
tzaddik,
and better.
see, the proof of this whole thing is, does a tzaddik have free choice? He can't sin.
Right.
Nebuch.
But you could do different levels of.
See, but it's not even a good question. What does it mean, does he have free choice? He can't sin.
It's not the choice.
You're shipwrecked on an island and you can't go shopping, so you have no free choice? Free choice is who you are, not what you can do. In fact, shipwrecked on an island, you will discover where your freedom really is. So I once went with another shliach, completely different personality, very different. Went to see this conservative rabbi who was very popular and famous, and it was very nice, very respectful. But at the end, he says, "So tell me, what kind of people become Hasidim?"
That's a good question. Was that really a question?
It was a little offensive.
Why? Why is it out of curiosity?
What kind of people? There are certain kinds that become Hasidim. So I said,
Unless he wanted to be one himself.
there are two Chassidim here. What kind do you think we are? You want individuality? You want to bring out the individuality in people? Get them to dress exactly alike, eat the same foods, read the same books, sing the same songs, and then we'll see. if there's any individuality. In other words, individuality doesn't come from how you dress. Anybody can wear that. When you are not different in any external way, what is left to you? Now we'll find out your individuality. So actually, when you take away options, you get closer to your freedom. So in many ways, when God gives us the mitzvahs, He's saying, thou shalt not kill. He's saying, you can't do it. If you were you couldn't do it. Not, well, you could do it, but please don't. So the Torah actually tells us two things. If you're not in touch with yourself, and you could either do a mitzvah or a sin, choose the mitzvah. But then it's a reasonable decision. It's not a free choice. But ultimately, the ultimate objective is get all interferences out of the way, and you are a Jew. And therefore, because you're going to do the mitzvahs. Without needing a reason to do it. Because that's just you. Why is that so significant and important? Because we're trying to have a relationship with Him. What is His feeling about the mitzvah? He thinks it's a good idea? He chooses the mitzvah because it makes sense? No. He is the mitzvah because that's godly. Now He says, can you become godly with me? Well, the only way that's going to happen is if you have free choice to do the mitzvah. So now it turns out like this. Since we have two souls, a human soul and a godly soul, when I decide to do a mitzvah because it makes so much sense, that's my human soul. My godly soul is saying, thanks. I've always wanted to do that. Without a reason. So the conclusion is, you should always do a mitzvah shaloi lishma, because from the shaloi lishma you will come to the lishma. You should do a mitzvah for an ulterior motive, because from the ulterior motive you'll eventually do it for the right reason. What does that mean? Do the mitzvah even if you think you're doing it for a good reason. Because behind that reason, your godly soul is doing it for no reason. So if your animal soul needs to be motivated because a human being has to tilt the scale, fine, give him a good reason. Give your human soul an explanation, a justification, but behind that, you don't need it. That's why if you lose a dollar bill and a poor man finds it, it's a mitzvah. So wait a minute, I didn't really intend for that to happen. But why is it a mitzvah? Because knowing your godly soul, if you should discover that a poor man benefited from your dollar, you want it. You don't resent it. The human part of you is, hey, give me my dollar back. I didn't decide to give it to you. But your godly soul will be thrilled to know that a poor man got your dollar. So instead of regret or resentment, it actually gives you pleasure. What is the pleasure? You didn't decide, you weren't in the mood, You weren't highly motivated and inspired to give tzedakah. Doesn't matter. To the godly soul, a mitzvah that's me. So it happened with a reason. I was thinking, I was not thinking in my sleep I did it. It doesn't matter. That's me.
So it's not that it's going to lead you, everything is.
Yeah.
How about mistakes? So the theory, the understanding that I had was that God plans, and then we do, and if we feel like it's a mistake, but really God has a reason why we were doing that. But if you're saying that God plans after we've done, then how do we explain a mistake?
There are two things. Neutral, non-moral issues, we never have free choice. God planned that completely. So where you live, what your job is, these are not moral issues. God decided that without consulting you because it's not important to the relationship.
I don't know. Someone living in the boondocks of Australia, it's very important to the relationship that doesn't know that he just discovered that he's Jewish. That is the whole relationship.
Okay, so you're bringing in a moral issue. So it's not the place itself, it's the availability of kosher food, whatever.
A whole lot.
Yeah. If a person says, I'm a doctor, maybe I should be a lawyer. Be a doctor. Unless there's something moral or... So the non-moral issues, we never had free choice. We never had any choice. In the moral issues, we have the freedom to make the choice. We don't have the freedom to control the outcome. Why? Because once we make our choice, God takes over and decides what should happen. So if you made a...
Does your prayer make a difference in that respect?
No.
In terms of the outcome?
So if you made a moral mistake, the mistake was you made a bad choice. The outcome could be very good because the outcome is up to God, not up to you. So Yosef's brothers made a very bad choice and decided to sell him into slavery to Egypt. What came from it? Great things. Not that they intended great things. They made a bad choice. But what comes from a bad choice? You never know. It's up to God. So if you make a bad choice and something good happens, you have to be very grateful. Pulled me out of a tight spot. Could have gone really bad. So in most cases, when we make bad choices, God protects us from our own choice.
How is that? We made a bad choice. The deed is done.
No, the choice is done.
What happens afterwards?
The guy buys a gun, points it at his victim, and pulls the trigger. That's it. Now you're out of control. What's going to happen with the bullet? What's going to happen to your intended victim? You have no control.
But let's say that person dies. That's
Not because of you.
Pull the trigger.
Yeah. When you pull the trigger, either it misfires, or you miss the target, or
Defense.
it's not the guy you intended to shoot. It was somebody else.
now you really killed somebody for.
So obviously that was not your decision. God made that happen. So if your intended victim does die, it's only because God decided.
Then
Not-
that's not taking responsibility
Exactly. It's taking responsibility for your choices, which makes you more responsible, not less.
So was a person supposed, if the person died, was he supposed to die?
Yes.
So God didn't plan that based on your choice?
He
So I thought
used,
he was gonna die, wasn't sure how.
no, he used your choice to be the means for this guy's death. And for that, you have to do tshuva.
So then why should that person?
No, but you said
suffer
he chooses
consequences?
after what's gonna happen.
Yeah, knowing that you're a murderer,
Right.
he arranges for the people who need to die to be there when you're shooting. Right?
So that serial killer now has an excuse that I could be this way because God wants me to be that way. Is that
No,
correct?
no.
Can we have a more positive example?
Well, you have to translate
So
it.
you
You
can't
have to
really ever
translate
be
it to
upset when
something in your
something bad
life that
happens.
is an equivalent.
Like upset at someone that
Don't
caused
get
something
too
bad to
logical.
happen.
What?
You're saying you can't ever be upset if someone caused something bad to happen. That person was, you're driving recklessly, you kill someone. So you can't really be upset that person died because this person was driving recklessly.
In other words, you're upset with him for driving recklessly, even if no one
We're
dies.
not upset that this child died. He was supposed to die.
Of course. Of course. No one is a victim in God's justice. No one is a victim of another person's free choice. Because I'm free to choose to kill, somebody has to die? That's ridiculous. That's not justice. It's like people say, the Holocaust, well, don't blame God. Hitler did it. What are you saying? In order for Hitler to have freedom of choice, 6 million people have to die? Now, come on.
So if it hadn't have been Hitler, it would have been a plague or something.
No one dies because somebody is crazy. Life is not that cheap.
So every child born in a neglectful or terrible abusive situation, that's just meant to happen to them.
Yes.
No, it's why we praying for them. Seriously, like that is what it is.
Well, we hope, we want the best.
And then what? What happens?
And hopefully our prayers will bring the best.
How? This is what it's meant to be. Where does prayer come in? Where does it? Where
That's another question.
it is.
So history doesn't teach us anything. Because history is a story of
Never changes
action
that
and
much.
consequence. You know what I mean? Cause and effect. Really, there is no cause and effect. History is just a story.
Well, morality is not cause and effect. Morality is not cause and effect. The murder is wrong not because somebody is going to die. Make sense? Murder is wrong because you cannot do that. So if you choose to do it, you're already a murderer. So it's making you more responsible, not less.
Wait,
But
you mean if you
sometimes
have to-
people-
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is very complicated because sometimes when it comes to educating people, and it seems like part of being an adult is looking at, sometimes people need to experience the consequences, even though it seems that that may not even really exist the way we're describing, of their actions in order for them to come to a place emotionally where they finally realize this is the good choice, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. We use the consequence to describe the choice. If you choose that, you know what's going to happen? So that confirms that the choice is wrong.
but Hashem set it up that way to be like that.
So
That-
it's like
that's-
So there has to be a very intimate relationship between the consequence of an action and the choice, right? So there's, even though like there was a relationship between the brothers selling Yosef into slavery and what came about as a result of it, no?
No, on the contrary. That's what Yosef is marveling at. You meant to harm me, and I became the viceroy of Egypt? You see how unpredictable this thing is?
So ultimately, our choice is between animal soul and godly soul. Like between what godly soul wants and animal soul wants.
Yeah.
And by experiencing consequences of our animal soul actions, we make our godly soul struggle, and we choose to like let it thrive.
Let me sum it up this way. A really moral person would never argue, yeah, I killed him. He was meant to die anyway. That is the most immoral person. Because it's all consequence-based. So if I insult you and you're hurt, that's because you're too sensitive. See, it's never my fault. Oh, you took it so personal? Well, don't be so sensitive. Morality can't be based on outcome. Because then it's not morality, it's practicality. You know, if everybody goes around shooting everybody, we're all going to be dead. That's morality? That's not morality. Morality means some things are past the red line. No matter what happens, you don't belong there. You should not be there. That's not what you should be choosing or wanting or...
It's so weird that Hashem would choose people's bad choices as a way of bringing about the good. It's so weird.
But that's how we explain how we have freedom of choice and yet the world will become perfect. How does that work? Because you will be responsible for your choices, but God will make the world work. So if we take responsibility for our choices, we are truly moral people. If you only take responsibility for the outcome, you're being practical. Like, don't kill people. How do you like it if you people kill you? It's not morality. You know what I mean? That's not a moral impulse. That's like, come on. Be reasonable. That's not morality. A moral person should be allergic to the idea of murder. So yeah, I shot him, but he didn't die, so you're a murderer. But he didn't die. So you're a murderer and a shlemazel.
But according to Torah law, you wouldn't hold that person accountable in the same way as if the person had died, right?
The court. But God does. In God's eyes, you are the murderer. The fact that he intervened doesn't get you off the hook. And the same is true with a mitzvah. Even a mitzvah you cannot do. Why don't you want it? Why don't you choose it? So the Rebbe says, Kairach wanted to be the Kohen Gadol. He was wrong. He was wrong because he can't be the Kohen Gadol. The fact that he wanted to be, that's beautiful. We should all want to be, even if we can't actually do it. Because what we want, that's our freedom of choice. So make your choices. Align yourself with the good stuff, not the bad stuff. Even if you can't do the mitzvah, and even if in fact you didn't end up killing the guy.
This seems to contradict what we said earlier about freedom in your core and the real freedom is not having anything get in the way. So if in Korach's core he really wanted to be, then this seems to kind of contradict what we're saying right here.
In his core, he
Something
wanted
is right,
godliness.
just trying to get rid of it.
Right? In his core, he wanted godliness, which is great.
Okay.
But you got to do it God's way. So if God says you're a Levi, then you're not a Kohen.
Okay, the godliness was okay.
Yep.
So your freedom of choice has to do with your desires, not your. It's really.
Yeah. It's not how straight you shoot. It's that you chose to shoot.
So how's it free choice to choose something negative when at our core we're good, we're godly?
Okay, so in terms of who I really am, if I choose to do a sin, it's not free choice. My Yetzer Hara interfered with who I really am. And that's why, even though he sinned, he's still a Jew. This is the Chabad approach to Kiruv. It's not, let me make you want to be good. Let me make you more Jewish. Let me get things out of the way for you so that you will be who you are.